Welcome to Book Talk. The world is secretly controlled by spies, or maybe plutocrats, or Freemasons, or perhaps some combination of the three. Alien space lizards from the lost continent of Atlantis murdered John F. Kennedy, and an assortment of drug-addled 60s rock stars for their own inscrutable reptilian reasons. And that's before, of course, they moved on to contrive the death of Princess Diana. Welcome to the world of conspiracy theories, which are all very amusing and wacky and silly, until someday someone solemnly informs you that no Jew went to work in the Twin Towers on 9/11. For this is the age of the conspiracy theory, and it's a phenomenon dissected in Voodoo Histories by my guest today, the columnist and political commentator David Aaronovitch. And David, the thing that I found most interesting going through your book is as you do this sort of tour through the descendants of Jesus Christ still living amongst us and the world Zionist conspiracies and all the rest of it, is what do the conspiracy theorists get out of all this? What's as it were, the mental benefit of being a practicing conspiracist?
I think the first thing we should say is that what we're talking about is not people who are ignorant, stupid, or crazy. There are some crazy conspiracy theorists out there on the fringes. What we're talking about is journalists, students, professors. Conspiracy theorists sort of almost inevitably come from the educated classes. But nevertheless, I think the thing that is shared between them is a desire to improve upon reality, to have a story that's actually better than the messiness of what truth is actually like. It's to have a proper ending to the story of a princess that isn't a car smash. It's to have a real a mystery to the death of a president that isn't a lone gunman who is crazy. And I think that there is something both kind of comforting about this. I mean, obviously there's the pleasure of telling the conspiracy theory, which is a bit like gossip. Psst, did you know the real story, etc., etc. It has that kind of function, so that when people lean into you to tell you their conspiracy theory, there's that kind of look of pleasure and glint in their eyes of the person passing on the sort of key to all knowledge, and so on. But overall, that is the desire to have a reality which is less contingent, less full of accidents, less incomplete and less messy than our own real lives are.
It's one of those irregular verbs. I know the real truth. He has an unorthodox interpretation of the facts. They are round the twist.
Exactly.
And what comes next, though? Because the conspiracy theory doesn't just stop with some guy in a bar telling you that who was really behind whatever it was.
Well, of course, there can be all kinds. I mean, it has to be said that most conspiracy theories will, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them, the secret and real reason why X or Y happens, don't get very far. I mean, for instance, today there's a conspiracy theory running on some of the websites that Mossad is behind the Iranian bloggers and the Iranian Twitterers who are communicating with each other about the rallies which may be happening even as we speak. And that I don't expect will be incredibly famous. But then there are other conspiracy theories. The JFK conspiracy theory now has a longevity of the best part of, 45 years? It is believed as strongly amongst some people as it was in the day almost on the day that it was minted. It has seen thousands and thousands of books published, some of them to significant and profitable effect, and for my generation at least, it was the default belief position of most people of my age and class. Now, we can say that it affected partially our view of how the state operated. It was to believe, or states operated was to believe, that actually there was a better explanation of the death of John F. Kennedy than the Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone gunman. So that one has had an incredible shelf life. Others, like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the belief that there's a secret Jewish conspiracy to run the world and that they made the mistake of codifying it in a document which was then stolen after the World Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. That one, although in Europe, of course, it stopped literally dead with the end of the Second World War and the defeat of Nazism, it having been a kind of key Nazi text, You will find it on Iranian television to this very day. You will find professors from Iranian universities discussing whether or not Hollywood movies have a secret encoded objective as laid out in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Of course, famously, it is also referenced in the Charter of Hamas.
Of course, that you traced in the book with some quite interesting sort of historical persistence some of the things that are going on there. I mean, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, you say, is based on actually a much older book, which isn't about a Jewish conspiracy at all. They've just sort of changed the subjects of an attack on the Emperor Napoleon III from the mid-19th century.
Exactly. I mean, let's recall about this. Something that seems absolutely ridiculous to us now, and we're talking about whether things are wacky or not, was sufficiently convincing because of the context and time for there to be an editorial in the Times about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in 1920 saying, if this is true, then this is absolutely terrible, and saying essentially, because we've just come out of the First World War, have we managed to escape the clutches of a Pax Germanicum only to fall into the worst ones of a Pax Judaicum? And it wasn't until a little bit later when their own correspondent in Constantinople dug up this original book, which had gone back to the era of Napoleon Bonaparte, and could see that the text had been actually excised and borrowed for the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that the nature of the forgery became clear. But even then, 1921 didn't affect the belief of very many people, including, obviously, the Nazis, in the authenticity of the document. Hitler said, the very fact, he said, that the Jews are so complaining about this forgery shows you that it must be true.
Well, that's the lovely circularity that so many of these conspiracies have. If you are trying to disprove it, you must be part of the conspiracy.
Oh, quite, yeah. I mean, of course,
when were you signed up, by the way?
Well, precisely. I mean, I'm therefore the kind of arch conspirator. I'm not only in on one of them, I'm probably in on 10 or 20. And I think actually I do have the distinction of being a reptilian shapeshifter in the view of David Icke, a named reptilian shapeshifter. And the way you're looking at me, I'm not at all sure about you.
Well, it's my complexion, you know. But the point about this is it's all very entertaining. But then suddenly, you know, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion underpinned not just Nazism, but the logic that led to the extermination camps. The Protocols of Zion take you to the gates of Auschwitz.
They do. Norman Cohn called his book, looking at the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, Warrant for Genocide. And he quoted at least one senior Nazi officer said the kind of mentality which adopted the protocols leads that. And I'll give you a very good example of this as well, which has been more recently discovered. Carmen Khalil's book, Bad Faith, excellent book, which deals with the career of a guy called Darquier de Pellepoix, actually Darquier, in France. He was a boulevardier in the interwar period, a ne'er-do-well and a fantasist. But he came into his own with the upsurge of sort of right-wing skirmishing on the streets of Paris in the late 30s. When Vichy France is called into being, Darquier de Pellepoix becomes the Vichy Commissioner for Jewish Affairs, on the basis that he has read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and believes it all to be true. And this animates his policies of cooperating with the Germans in the transportation of the French Jews who were in Vichy. An absolute direct thing. No Protocols of the Elders of Zion, almost certainly Darquier de Pellepoix wouldn't have been interested in the case. It fascinated him and animated, according to Khalil, and animated his actions thereafter.
And of course the modern conspiracy theory du jour was 9/11 somehow staged by shadowy dark forces within or possibly outside of, depending on your point of view, the American government for some unspecified geopolitical purpose. There's a whole slew of conspiracy theories.
If only it was unspecified, Mark. Well, if only it was, it's usually in this theory specified at significant length. But anyway, I interrupted you.
But what I'm saying is that here we have a modern conspiracy theory, a conspiracy that would have needed thousands upon thousands of people to be involved in it to have worked, but a theory unfolding that has a direct influence on. You take polls now, large numbers of people who think it was the CIA what done it, or Mossad what done it, or someone else what done it.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a very interesting kind of phenomenon. I mean, most of the, if you like, the kind of intellectual basis, if we were to call it that, of the theory actually emanates in America itself. American academics, usually theologians, philosophers and so on, who've taken a sort of more than ordinary interest in physics, even if they show a less than ordinary expertise in the subject. Nevertheless, the theories which they adumbrate and so on can get enormous purchase in the countries of the Middle East.